my topic of today's discussion, that is about writing research papers. Uh, Before we start the presentation, I understand that post-lunch sessions are always difficult, not for participants, for faculties also. I had my lunch few minutes back, so I'll try to make this session more interactive, and I request all of you to ensure that you interact regularly with me. You can stop me somewhere in between when you find that you would like to discuss something, you have some query, and yes, we can certainly discuss on that. So again, let me begin with my presentation on writing scientific research paper. May I know how many of you, because about 50 participants I could see on the participant list, may I know how many of you are involved in writing research papers? Few, 10, 15. Can you tell me about your experience in writing scientific research papers? Let it be more interactive. Anyone?
Participants are requested to unmute yourself and give the answer. Many of the participants has raised the hands. So instead of that, please unmute yourself and just interact with the sir or write in the chat box, whatever you like.
Yes, because see, it is Google Meet, so I am not able to see anything. Once the screen is, my screen is filled with my presentation, so I am not able to see your queries or questions on screen, unfortunately. So if you answer my queries or questions, I will be very happy to interact with you. So if you have any experience in writing research paper in good journal, please.
So one of the participants wrote difficulties with reference.
Okay. I think referencing is a part where you need to go through the research paper and then you need to identify the journal and you need to follow the guidelines provided by the journal itself. And there are many softwares available which can help you to get the complete referencing easily done. Okay, so I think there is I could see that it is in the schedule of this training program. One session is there on referencing. Professor Vora, I think he will be delivering a session on that. So various tools are available which can help you to reduce the time for referencing. And there are two categories of referencing. Generally, if I can say, one could be in text citation, and then at the end you are writing all the reference, you are adding all the references which you have used. And in both the cases, what kind of style a particular journal is following, you need to follow that style for writing that research paper. And each journal will have their own requirements. But yes, tools are available that will help you to reduce the complexity and timing required to develop the referencing. So my first question is about why we need to write any research paper. What is the requirement for that? Is it necessary? Why should we write anything? Why should, because we are more I think most of we are from academics and we are teaching students, and I believe that a researcher may not be a good teacher and a good teacher may not be a good researcher. That may not be, you might not have the capabilities of both the requirements, like you are an excellent teacher but you might not be a good researcher, or vice versa. But yes, still there is some requirement and we need to develop few papers out of that. So why we need to write paper, why this learning is required? Is there any specific requirement for that?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Probably, like if we put on something in paper, we get to know, like, probably the researcher is only knowing the idea about what research he or she is doing. But when we put it on paper, we make it more public so that, what is the current trend or research going on. Everybody can make out of it and get to know that where it stands and where further can this research be headed. So that is
Okay.
the thing what I feel, why we have to write down a research paper, or
Okay.
I need to note down it, like uh,
Fine.
in a presentation form.
Fine. Thank you. So one could be for readers. That is what she was answering. That for readers to understand what is happening in the research world, we would like to interact with those researchers. We would like to be a part of that scientific community. So yes, we need to write papers. That is one thing. Is there any other requirement?
Hello. Hello. Sir, good
Yes.
afternoon.
Good
Sir,
afternoon,
I
madam.
believe that writing a research paper can globally approve our work.
Okay. Okay. So get the recognition. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So yes, this is ultimately we would like to have. We would like to publish papers so that one day we could have a screen like this, isn't it? Where we have our publications appeared in top-notch journals like cleaner production or material processing technology, or say Emerald journals, or you have Springer, you have Taylor and Francis, and yes, this is what the ultimate goal is. And not only publication, but ultimately this will give you recognition, and you will have a network now, because you are the part of that scientific community and you are contributing to that literature. So our goal is to develop a research paper, not only to say that yes, I am doing something, but also to understand what others are doing and how I can contribute in the current state of literature. What can I add in the delta addition? How I can make that delta addition? And see, ultimately, if you are doing some work and if it is not published, it is always equal to not, you're not doing anything. So the research being done but not published equal to no research, because only you know what you have done, or your say fellow is knowing what you are doing or what you have done. But if you would like to get the recognition in that scientific community, yes, you need to publish it. And that is what the requirement is in a today's requirement. If you want to go for promotion, yes, you need publication. If you want to join a better institute, you need publication. If you want good research projects, you need publication. So everywhere publications are required, and now lots of journals are there. And now the important thing is to identify the correct journal for your work. So that is again an important aspect when we are publishing something. And yes, because I'm talking about writing research paper, let me clarify it once that there is no standard recipe. We cannot have a fixed thali like this when we are writing a research paper, because ingredients may vary depending upon the type of research you have conducted, whether you are working on a basic research or an applied research, qualitative form of research, or you are writing quantitative, or you are working on quantitative method of research, or you are working on a review paper. What kind of research you are conducting? A review, literature review, exhaustive literature review, that is again that is where you can publish your work, because you are demonstrating the gap, and you are developing few possibilities of extension of the existing research. So that could be one of your contributions. So there is no standard recipe when we are writing any paper, because ingredients may vary depending upon the type of research you are conducting. Okay. So what I'll be discussing today may not be the only format in which a research paper can be developed. But yes, I'll be trying to compile the things in such a manner that at least it will help you to get a good idea about what are the major ingredients you need to have. Like salt, we need everywhere. Whatever the food you are cooking, most of the time we need salt in that. Okay. So those important ingredients I'll be talking about. What is that? What is a research publication in high-valued peer-reviewed journal? It is a measure of two important aspects. One is quantity and quality. Quantity of efforts, hard work you have invested in your research. And the second, quality of research conducted. See, if we talk about publication in reputed journal, peer-reviewed journal, high-valued peer-reviewed journal, quantity only alone will not help. Quality alone will not help. Both combination or trade-off between these two, quantity as well as quality, both are important, and that is the measure. When we are able to publish something in the high-valued peer-reviewed international journal, yes, that indicates that yes, we had enough quality of work with requisite quantity. As we discussed, any research not leading to any publication is equivalent to a research not executed at all, or there is non-existent of that. And that is my belief. I believe that when you work something, do not keep it in your inventory. Try to convert it into a good publication, a good paper, and at least submit it somewhere. Okay, you will always find some outlet. See, publication is what? Your paper is your product. Your product, if you are submitting in one journal and if it is not accepted there are multiple such outlets available, and you try to get it published somewhere. But yes, you must ensure that when you are submitting your paper, it should be a good international or national peer reviewed journal. It should have its quality in terms of say how we decide the quality of any research journal. Could be whether it is indexed in Scoopers or Ebesco, or you can say it is having that citation record, it is having site score, it might be having your impact factor. So when you decide the list of journal, that is what I am doing. When I am developing a paper, before we start developing a paper, I should find that what are the probable journals in which I would like to publish my paper. List of those 5-6 journals should be available to you before you start producing your product, because these are the outlets, and each outlet will have its own requirement. So you should know what my customers are looking for, and according to that, I should prepare my product. Okay, the initial few ingredients are same, but when we are finalizing the shape of that particular paper, it should follow the guidelines or the requirements of that particular journal. So yes, few ingredients are there; they must be there, but at the same time, the garnishing of your product should be done according to the journal's requirement. Yes, so when I say scientific paper, it is nothing but central outcome of your research followed because you have organized description of hypothesis. Hypothesis, when you develop your paper, you should have some questions in your mind. Those research questions are need to be converted into hypothesis. And you test those hypotheses and you develop your findings, and then you develop your discussion on results and conclusions. And yes, interpretation of your results, that is also important. So when I talk about scientific research paper, it is central outcome of your own research. Own research, I'm standing it with that it should be the outcome of your research conducted by you. It should have a complete description of the hypothesis which you are testing to your research, and then you are developing your results based on the analysis of your data or testing of your hypothesis. Very important thing that when you are writing your research paper, when you are developing your research paper, you should keep that thing in your mind that whatever you are doing not for yourself, you are doing it for, you are developing it for your readers. See, most of the time, in a particular field in which I am working right now, I might be knowing many things about it. But when I'm writing a research paper, I should ensure I should prepare a research paper, develop a research paper in such a manner that my reader is able to understand it. See, most of the thing I may try to avoid because I think these are very trivial thing. I should not be these things should not be included in the research paper. Few explanations, few definitions. Yes, they should be there as a part of your develop paper. Reason behind that is your reader might not be aware of that. He is new in that particular research field, and your paper should help him or her to understand that particular area of research. So when you are developing your research paper, you should keep that thing in your mind that your paper should be intended to instruct the reader, to help the reader to understand the particular area of your research. Objective of any scientific research paper is very clear. You should formulate a problem, try to represent that problem correctly, use any methodology, appropriate methodology to get the solution for that. And once the solutions are available, don't stop there, draw the conclusions on that basis of the solutions which you have adopted, which you have achieved at the end of the solution procedure. So basically, when we talk about the process of scientific paper development, problem formulation is very important. We'll talk about it later. Selection of appropriate solution methodology, another important aspect, and then how those outcome of your solution methodology will help to next stage this researcher, how the further research can be further extended, what are your conclusions, how you are adding to the existing literature, what is your data contribution in the scientific work. So draw your conclusions on that basis. And this journey is nothing but the purpose of developing a scientific research paper. Very important is that our objective of developing a scientific paper should not be only to represent or show the data collection process and data presentation. Most of the time, we may find few papers where what they did, they have collected some data either through experimentation or through, say, some survey methodology, and then they have presented it nicely with good diagrams, colored diagrams and figures. But that is not the scientific research paper. That should not be the objective of any scientific research paper. Interpretation of this, that is very important. Not only presentation of data. Analysis of data is very important. Analysis, and then after analysis, what are the conclusions and what is the interpretation of that analysis? That is very important. So it should not be only limited to data collection and data presentation. Can anybody answer what is impact factor? Yes. Yes. Am I audible?
Shashank sir, I'm
Ji?
just very new to the world of research, but I can just, as much as I can understand, like when we are thinking of writing a paper or something, the impact factor of the journal is very important. Like, for example, how many people have been citing it in their references and all that? Like, how famous is it? How practically it is accepted by various, from the research fraternity. I think this is the meaning of impact factor.
Exactly. So this is kind of index, we can say, right? It's a numerical value, but it is for particular journal. How this journal is contributing in the research fraternity. What is the impact of this particular journal? And now, see, most of the journals are now in the they are having their own impact factor, but that is not valid. So when you are selecting your journal for publication, you should ensure that the impact factors are available on the correct website. And the impact factors should be supplied by the external agency, not by the journal itself. Okay. So how generally impact factors are measured? It is nothing but it is measured for a given particular year. The impact factor of a journal is the average number of citations received per paper published in the journal during last 2 preceding years. So if we are talking about impact factor of any journal, this particular, say in year 2020, that is nothing but if that particular journal is publishing 100 papers in published 100 papers in 19 and 18, and how many total number of citations are available for those papers. So sum of that, and when we take the average of that, that number is giving me the impact factor of that journal. So today's impact factor is basically the citations of the papers published in the journal in last 2 years. Like impact factor, now it is not only limited to impact factor of the journal. Now researchers, they are having their own index, we can say, in terms of quality of research. Can anybody tell me what are those index? Two very known index values are there for researchers, for scientists. One is known as H index and I index. I index. I10 index. What is H index? On Google Scholar, you might find it somewhere that this is a particular researcher and this is the H index for this. So H index is that it's the value. If I am having say 10, 15 publications which are there in the Google Scholar, I'm talking about specifically in Google Scholar, and at least this many papers have this many, that is the maximum value of citations. So I have 7 papers with at least 7 citations. If that 7, my H impact factor is 7, what it means? Sorry, H index is 7. What it means? It means that I have 7 papers with at least 7 citations. I might be having 100 papers, but out of those 100, there are 7 papers with at least 7 citations. I-10 index represents a value where number of papers having at least 10 citations. So these are the two factors, or sorry, two important indexes now available for researchers to understand the quality of research papers they are publishing. Because
Can
as
you,
your
sir,
yes,
Shashank,
yes,
sir, can you please explain it again? I could not get you. 7 means 7 papers with 7 citations,
at
you
least
said.
7 citations. At least if my
Okay.
index, my H index is 7, that means
Yeah.
I have 7 publications with at least 7 citations. So both
Okay.
both these
Okay.
requirements should be there. One is number of publications and then minimum, at least the minimum number of citations. If I have 8 papers with 8 citations, my H index will be 8.
Okay.
Okay, so it includes both quality as well as quantity. And then I-10 index, that is the index where we are talking about number of publications with at least 10 citations. That is why it is known as I-10. So these two indexes, you may find it on the Google Scholar platform also. But ultimately, impact factor specifically talks about the impact of that particular journal. I-10 or H index represents the impact of that particular researcher in the research fraternity in the scientific world. Both the things are very important. For publication purpose, yes, we need to identify, we need to select the journal having good impact factor. Good impact factor. So let us talk about writing scientific papers now. Pre-planning stage, yes, it is very important for any publication. When we are starting developing any research paper, pre-planning stage of this work is very important. The first thing, you need to identify a focused research agenda. Now, how will you identify this exactly? What should be my research? How I should go about it? Where should I work? So again, a thorough literature review will help you. If you are working on a particular research problem with your supervisor may help you. Your colleagues may help you. Your network in terms, or you can say that similar research is going on in any other institute. Those researchers may help you to understand or to explain. They may help you to identify the exact research problem you can go ahead with. So when we say decide about which specific topic to focus on based on the combinations of your own interest, yes, that is very important. Your own interest, your capabilities. See, sometimes that particular research area might be now exhausted with some says primary research work. Now they might be looking at the work related to some mathematical modeling, but is it, are you capable of developing such mathematical model? Do you have that those capabilities? So all these things will come into picture. Work done by previous researchers, that is that we can understand by thorough literature review. Originality and scope of for new contribution, and that is where we talk about publication in good leading international journals. How much you are contributing, what is your delta addition in that existing literature, how much you are contributing in this current state of literature, and what is the scope for that when you are developing a new paper, when you are starting your research journey in terms of publication. So all these things will help you, and I think we had you had few sessions on developing and finding the exact research problems. I may not be going in that detail, but yes, all these things simultaneously, in totality, holistically, will help you to identify a focused research problem or research agenda for your journey. And very important is that basically we say that problem juridically defined is a problem half solved. So how you define your problem, exactly what is your problem, what you are trying to fill? What is the gap you are trying to fill? Is there a gap? First thing, if yes, there is a gap in that literature, how you will be filling that gap? What kind of research you will be conducting? Which methodology you will be applying? How you will be contributing in that? What new you are finding? So all these things are important. And focus the research problem definition. Remember that a problem judicially defined is a problem half solved. Very important. Very correct definition of a problem statement is very important. And always remember that when you start working on your research problem, you should be very flexible at the initial stage, because you are working with a new research problem. It is quite possible that when you start your work, you have decided that this should be the path on which I'll be working on. But sometimes, say, the methodology might not be applicable. When you have decided this methodology I'll be utilizing, but the type of data you are collecting may not help you, may not allow you to use that methodology. Or sometimes the material on which you are planning to work might not be available. The equipment you are planning to work might not be available, and you cannot say that, okay, because this equipment is not available, or this material is not available, or this set of data is not available, I will not go with my existing research. So initially you should be very flexible. You should be able to reorient your work, or sometimes problem statement or problem definition, depending upon your progress. It may happen after, say, a few 30-40% work is over and we are actually working on the analysis of your data. Initially you must have assumed that, okay, this will be the methodology which I'll be using, but may not be good enough to analyze your data. So some reorientation or some change in the existing plan may help you to progress further. Like, it is very important to be flexible and ready to reorient your problem definition once you are working or you are moving towards your path of completion. And most of the time when you publish something, and if it is accepted by editor, and if your publication or paper will go to reviewer, always they will raise this query: what is the novelty in your work? Can you define something which is novel in your work? What is the substantial originality of your work? And that is where we say that at initial problem, when you are developing or when you are defining your problem, initial stage, when you say that this will be the novelty of my work, this will be the originality in my work, that will always enhance the scope of your publication in leading high impact scientific paper, journal. So how to go about it? Give a tentative title of your work. Because see, most of the time it may happen that your title will help you to, or it may guide your research, because you might be having few words in your title. Let us say your title is analyzing success factor for this. Now that means you are, the three important parts are there. One is analyzing. That means you would like to analyze something. Success factors that means you need to identify success factor. For, say, in Indian context, that means now you are working in the Indian context. So these 3 or 4 important words in your paper title is always helping you to develop the correct outline and the flow of your work. So you should always give a tentative title of your work. Yes, finally, you might be working on that later on, depending upon your conclusion, depending upon the final methodology, some minor modifications are allowed always. But initially, you should always start with a tentative title of your work. And that is what we say, name the baby before conception. You should always develop outline of your paper at the beginning. Yes, reorientation is always, that flexibility is always there, as we discussed. But that outline will help you to understand what should be the flow of my work when we are working on a particular. See, most of the time what we do, we develop a paper once the work is completed. Okay. So once we have completed the experimentation part, once the results are available to me, I'll start working on my paper. But yes, when we are developing a paper, we need to keep all those things, which material we had used, what was the methodology, which kind of experiment we had performed. Okay, so all these things should be available to us. And how I collect all this information? Once I have clear cut outline of my paper, that I would like to start with introduction. Introduction में क्या क्या include करना है भाई? And what should be my methodology? How I will be developing my literature review? Because literature review will help me to justify that yes, why I have worked on this problem, why my problem is important, why this research is important, why this contribution is important. So that how you justify this through thorough literature review. So this should be the part where I'll be working on the literature review. Then I'll talk about my methodology, then I'll talk about my analysis process, then I'll talk about my conclusion, and then interpretation, and then implication, and many more things. So make outline of your paper at the beginning of the stage. Objectives, hypothesis, results, and conclusion here. So good outline, ultimately it will help you and it will guide your research from the initial stage to final publication. So what should be a research outline? Initially it might be unstructured, but it should answer following. And that is, these questions are very important. When you are starting your research, your research outline should answer these questions. First, why did I do this work? Is this work important? Is this work going to contribute something? Second, what are the implications? Implications might be social implications, might be practical implications, might be implications to industry person, might be implications to some Indian economy or international globally. It might be having some implications. So what are those implications? What is the impact of this research? What is new? What is the novelty of my work? Because it is quite possible that sometimes you are using the old, well-defined, well-established methodology, the same set of data, and the data earlier version of the research might be having the X type of data. Now you are using Y type of data. You are expecting the same outcome at the end. Then it will not help you to generate or develop a good paper and publication of that good paper. So what is new in my work? You might be working on two different methodologies. You might be looking at the hybrid version of that methodology. That is new in your work. Or when we are talking about, say, the materials, you might be working on a new material. Similar work has been done with material X. Yes, you might be working on material Y, having its own difficulties. What are my hypotheses? Development of the hypothesis, and there are two different words generally we use in research. One is hypothesis and second one is proposition. What is the difference? Can anybody help me to understand the difference between these two? Generally we develop both hypothesis as well as proposition. See, basically, let me answer it. When our research area is at the mature stage, generally we do have enough literature behind us. That means we can study the literature and we can develop the hypothesis. The hypothesis is they are my assumptions. Generally, we say hypothesis is nothing but the assumption about it, something, and then we test it with the collection of data or performing some experiment. So when you have enough literature available to you, then we develop generally hypothesis. But when you are working on something on or you can say theory building work, you do not have enough literature available. Then you propose something. And when you propose something, then it is known as propositions. Okay, so two different categories of work generally we say. One is hypothesis development. That means you have some background literature, you have historical information available, data set is available, and then based on that information, based on that literature, you develop the hypothesis. Where you do not have enough literature available, generally you develop propositions. So two important things are there: hypothesis development and propositions development.
Sir, can you give examples of both?
Yes. See, in my area, when we talk about my research area, let us say I'm talking about manufacturing engineering. So enough literature is available in terms of, say, if you are in the civil area, civil engineering areas, I think you might be working on something called lean construction. Correct. So here, if enough literature is available, that means we know what are the lean practices are being followed right now. What is the impact of those practices in this particular industry? Then based on this literature, you develop the hypothesis, and you would like to test those hypotheses that this practice will have its impact on this particular. So this is the practice, and this is its impact. It is there in the literature, but now you would like to test it in different environment. Earlier, it might have the different environment. Now, you would like to help the researcher to have a same connection but in different environment. So all these things are hypotheses. But when you are developing something which is new theory you are building, that is known as theory testing and theory building. Two different zones are there. When we are talking about theory building, we generally develop propositions because we do not have enough literature available. Okay, so then we propose something, and then we perform some case analysis on some case study, and we try to ensure that what are the outcomes, or how my propositions are converted into a set of you can say findings or recommendations.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, then which figures or tables will reflect the outcome of my research in the best possible way. See, you might be having a pie chart or say, radar chart, or you might be having a bar chart, anything. But now, see, same data set can be presented in different manners. Now, how my results are best presented in which whether which kind of figure, which kind of plots, how it should be presented, whether it is good to present it in the tabular form, or it is good to present it in the plot form. So see, ultimately initially you should answer this question, because ultimately once you are starting working on your paper, it might be difficult for you because you have a good number of figures available, data set available. Now it is difficult to understand. Now at that time it might be difficult for you to identify whether this plot or this plot. But initially, when you do not have anything on the background, you can say that okay, this is the plot, and if these are my outcomes, this plot or this kind of figure will help me to explain it in the better, in present it in the best possible manner. And see, when we are performing any experiment, generally we have some expectations that these are the results which should be there at the end of experimentation. So what results are expected? Sometimes it may happen that you might not be getting the outcome as per your expectation. So two things are there. If that can be a good contribution in the research, yes. If this it's the literature suggests, the history suggests that x plus y should be equal to z, and with your new approach or with your methodology, if you are not getting x plus y equal to z, either there is something wrong in your approach, or something what you are contributing is something very new. So both the things are there. So you should be able to justify what that these are the expected results, and if your expected results are not achieved, why this has happened. Okay. So sometimes you may go back to your original procedural aspect, and you may verify whatever I am getting, and this was expected. There is the variation, there is the change, there is the larger difference, deviation from my expected result. What might be the result? And still, if you are able to justify this deviation, please go ahead with that. Do not say that okay, my results are not correct. No, that might be your new contribution, and it will have better chances for publication also. Yes, where do I want my major conclusion to be directed? See, what kind of conclusions I would like to, how I would like to focus in terms of my contribution. Whether I am with this work, I would like to contribute in, say, in the area of say managerial implications, in social implications, in terms of say economical aspect, in terms of let us say sustainability. How I would like to extend. See, once your performance is done, once your experimentations are done, you have set of results available. Now how you would like to, because when you are writing your introduction, you are always stating that these are my objectives, these are my research questions, these are my hypotheses. And now when you write your conclusion should be linked with those original questions which were raised earlier in your paper. So that linkage should be established. And that is where it is very important to know that where do I want my major conclusions to be directed. Some of the important points which are to be addressed while writing paper, it is like making a story, yes. The difference is it is not based on fiction. It is basically scientific facts. Why my story is important, and what broad issue I am working on, or how these issues are being addressed through my research. One critically assess what have others done in the previous research related to my topic, and this is where we talk about literature review. It should not be a mere narration. See, because I'm reviewing few papers. Generally, what these authors are doing, they are just narrating that person X or author X, they have performed this experiment like this, and these are their outcomes. Author Y, they have used this material, this was the methodology, these are their outcomes. But that is not enough. That is not justifying your paper. Why you are writing your paper? It is not only the narration of what others have done. What is expected is critical assessment of positives and negatives, and that will help you to find research gap. That yes, see, look at this diagram or this table. This table will help you to understand. See, this is one of my papers where this literature review table was developed. Look at this. These are three. If I look at the first column, various tools and techniques adopted by, where the last column, that is the different authors. So these are the methods available right now. And now you can, from this table itself, you can find that, see, two important aspects were not addressed: environmental and social aspect. So this is the gap. But instead of writing that this Seth and Gupta, they have used this technique, these were their inputs and these are their outputs, that will be not enough. How you critically assess the positives and negatives or gaps in the existing literature, that is very important. So you should be able to present your literature review in the better way. Another way of looking at it like this: see, these are the list of journals, these are the authors, these are the assessment tools, and this is what they have assessed using those tools or approaches. Now you can count what kind of assessment has been done and what is not being done, and you can justify your work now with this. So this is nothing but a kind of literature review presentation. Only writing one paragraph for each author will not help you to justify your research. So presentation, and in terms of either figures, in terms of tables of literature review, is very important. Nowadays it is very important to publish a paper with such kind of information where you can pinpoint exactly where is the gap, what is the gap. What is the novelty in my work? What is new? What new I am contributing? And that is where, what is the missing link in the literature, which I would like to fill through this research. So, and most of the time I'm getting my paper back. When I'm submitting it, after a few weeks, it may come back to me that it is rejected. The most of the time, the reviewers are asking for novelty. What is novelty in your work? You are just following the same tool. You are just following the same approach. You are collecting the data as others have collected. So what is new in your work? They might be saying that we do not want another X, another Y. Okay, it is available in literature. Okay, earlier they have worked on, say, chemical industry. Now your work is related to manufacturing engineering or manufacturing engineering industry. What is the difference? What is new in your work? Okay, fine, your work is only related to manufacturing industry, but what is novelty in your work? Is there approach which is new? The way of collecting data, that is new. So what is novelty in your work? What kind of conclusions you are your conclusions are directing or helping the policymakers to develop few new policies? Yes, that is the novelty of your work. So you should ensure that there is some novelty in your work, because now at large statistics says that in good journals, in a year they are generally rejecting 90% of the papers from the editor desk only. That means out of 100 papers, 90 papers are not even going for review to reviewers. Only editors are scrutinizing, and out of 100 papers, they are only forwarding 90 papers for, sorry, 10 papers for reviewing. Remaining 90 are rejected from the editor itself. Purpose of that is that the quantum of papers they are getting is very high, and they cannot handle those many reviews. Okay, so only if you have some novelty, initial, original contribution in your work, then and then it will go for review. Otherwise, it will be rejected from the editor only. And your paper should justify this. That is what I'm saying. What is the novelty? Where is the novelty in my work? Your abstract. Now, when we talk about abstract, I'll talk about that. See, look at this. This is one of the diagram. Look at this. This is the process generally we use in the chemical engineering. Heat exchanger design में use करते हैं. I don't know how many mechanical engineers or chemical engineers are there in the participant, But generally, pinch analysis is one of the methods which generally we use in the mechanical or chemical engineering, where we talk about heat exchanger design. I have used in my work. So basically, an approach from chemical or mechanical engineering is used in some, say, lean manufacturing aspect. That is novelty in your work. That approach from any other discipline is used to investigate your problem. Publication chances will increase. So you should not limit your literature search to your particular focused area. When you are talking about your methodology, your approach of solving a particular problem, try to come out of that box and try to find out methods which are applicable and which are right now applied by another area. But yes, you can use those methods in your particular research area. So that would be a novel contribution, a new contribution. Detailed analysis of research outcome like this, presentation of your outcome, very important. How you present your outcome, whether it is a theoretical or experimental. These are the some of experimental results I had received, and I've just presented it. Look at the way it is being presented. I can write a paragraph for this. I can present it tabular in a tabular form. I had decided why not to go with a form like this, where I can plot it beautifully. Look at this. See, this will only simply you can look at the figure and you can say that okay, this is what is happening. In table, if you present this, you might not be able to understand exactly. But in a plot form, yes, you can say that this is coming. Initially, it is at this point. Now it is increasing. Further, it is decreasing. At this particular point, it is coming at the minimum value, and then it's other increasing. So instead of putting in the tabular form, if you present it like this plot, is a beautiful presentation of that data. So that is what is important. How you would like to present your outcome. Look at this. The reader will understand it in the better way. The reviewer will appreciate the work you have done. Other points to be addressed while writing a paper: conclusions. Whatever the work you have done till when you are writing a conclusion, that means you have completed your literature review, you have introduced your topic well, you identified the research gap, you established your hypothesis, you tested your hypothesis either through experiment or through some survey, you performed some statistical analysis. But at the end, what does it all mean? What is the take-home message? What is the learning out of this research work? The conclusion should include this. And see, generally abstract, it appears at the beginning of any research paper. But we write the abstract, we develop the abstract at the end of all this. That is why we say we are just summarizing the work. Let me talk about the structure. Again, it's always a flexible structure. There is no defined structure. Depending upon the type of research you are conducting, these elements may vary. But yes, always you should start with a title, your set of your authors, list of affiliations of authors and everything, and then abstract, then your introduction, very important. Whatever the methodology approaches you are using, that should be defined well, that should be justified well, results and discussion, conclusion, and references. The basic structure, something like this you may find in all the papers. But yes, flexibility is there. So see why abstract is important, because when a paper you are submitting a paper to a journal, you may always find that abstract is submitted separately, not along with paper. You generally submit abstract at the initial stage where you have to write those 250 words, and these 250 words will help editor to understand whether this particular paper is falling in the scope of this journal, whether it has some novelty, whether it is contributing enough, whether I should allow this paper to go ahead or not. So that is why abstract is very important. It is gist of summary. We understand it. But what it should report? It should report the essential facts contained within the document. And it should not exaggerate or contain material that is not there in the main text. Sometimes it may happen that whatever you are writing in the abstract, it is not there in the main text. It should not happen. It is happening most of the time. Because we are writing abstract separately at the end of every paper development, we may add something in the abstract which is not there exactly in the text, the final version of the paper. Or sometimes we say that this is substantially, this is very crucial, this is very critical. These are the words which creates trouble. But in their conclusion, this is not justified. Use of those words is not justified. It should contain aim, method, findings, and yes, very important, recommendations. And I should add one thing here, that is limitations. All these things should be there in the abstract. It should always expose the novelty of your paper. Very critical. Underline the gaps, either theoretical or practical. Generally, I follow a good way of writing that abstract. It is generally Emerald journals. They are following a structured way of developing abstract. I follow. Then, depending upon the journal requirement, we can merge it or you can differentiate it. That is the problem. But generally, it is a statement of 250 words. See, this is how it should be developed. You should always start with the purpose. That what is the purpose of this research? What is the purpose of developing this paper? Which methodology, approach, or how you design your uh, work? What is your research design? Which methodology you have employed or approach you have used? What are your findings? Then you should go to your implication part, practical implication or social implication, or what are your limitations. At the end, it should go to the value. What is the value addition? You should be able to justify with your research. What is that delta value addition to your research? And everything should be there in your abstract itself, because initially the screening is done based on your abstract. So from purpose to value addition to originality, keywords, selection of keyword, that is also important. So your abstract should include and should have this flow. That is what I feel, that it should start with the purpose and should end with the value addition. And when we say writing an abstract, you can say that you should follow the chronology of the paper itself. What is the flow within your paper? It should be developed accordingly. And I think if you look at the outline, this outline will always help you to develop the correct abstract. A few recommendations: that text should be written in the active voice. It is being used widely. Yes, we should have good keywords. And when I say selection of keyword, that is very important, because keywords will help you to improve your citations. Okay, because let us say I'm working in a particular area, I will always type in the Google Scholar that particular keyword, and if your abstract is there is having that keyword, it will be popped up. So the key selection of appropriate keyword is very important, because it will help the searching of that paper. We have some time, so let me continue. What is my broad topic and why my broad topic is significant? So that is what I should include in my introduction. What others have done in the connection to this topic, including your own work. Sometimes you are extending your work, so you should also include that. This is what is being done now, how I am including or how I am extending that work. What were the issues which were not addressed earlier, and I am trying to address those issues. So this is how I should develop my introduction. What strategy did I use to establish my point? Introduction, when I let me move a bit faster. Yes, this final tab, you can see where is the gap exactly. You should pinpoint the exact gap on which you are working. It should help you to develop your research objective as well as questions or hypotheses or propositions. And how you will say that these are the gaps? Based on thorough literature review. Though your literature review section is followed after, that means you are writing your literature review section after introduction, but yes, your introduction section should justify that these are the gaps which I'll be declaring when I'm talking about literature review. So these are the gaps which I would like to fill. These are the methodology or these are the approaches I'll be using, and enough justification is required for utilization of your those approaches. See, it is quite possible that you are using X method and you are saying that this paper or this research is using method X for analyzing the data. That is not enough. You should also have why you have not used approach Y or approach Z or approach A, B, and C. What are the limitations or what are the problems with those methodologies and why this method X is more appropriate in your case. So that justification of selection of methodology should be there in your introduction section itself. Though you are talking on your methodology at the later stage, but your introduction section should include the justification for selection of method or approach or particular research design. This is, these are the comments I had received on my introduction section, and I'm just trying to explain you that why introduction section is very important. See, the comment was like this: are you talking about theory testing or theory building? It is unclear whether the authors intend to test theory or expand existing theory. If the first case, that means if you are talking about theory testing, I recommend them to include hypothesis as we discussed, because now when we are talking about theory testing, you have enough literature available, you are working on different environment, but literature suggests that in this environment, these are the outcomes, which a different environment, you say this should be the outcome or this might be the outcome. These are your assumptions. So if it is theory testing paper, you recommend them to include hypothesis in the theoretical background section. If theory building case is there, propositions should be there. It should emerge from a case study analysis, and therefore propositions should not be presented in the introduction section. Why? Because we do not have enough literature available to support our proposition. So when we are talking about hypothesis available, yes, you can include in the introduction section, but not propositions. So all these things you should keep in your mind when we are developing your introduction section, because it is very strong belief that if your introduction section is good enough, you have better chances of publication, because in introduction section you are talking about your literature review, your gap identification, your problem statement, your methodology justification, your questions, your hypotheses, and your complete organization of your paper. So all these things are introduced in your introduction section, and that is why it is very important to write introduction section very thoroughly. Then when we talk about methodology, why this method is relevant, why this X is important, why it is more appropriate in my case than Y and Z and A and B and C. There are multiple approaches available. Why this particular approach is selected for my case? Justification is important. How does it help authors to address their research question? Proper justification for application or employment of that particular method is important. Yes. Yes, results and discussion. Generally, we know that data organization through set of tables and figures and schemes, whatever you would like to include, but it should give explanation to each phase. And like this, the figure 1 shows variation of y as function of x, keeping set unrelated or constant. It is evident that x increases, y first increases, then again. So see, that is where either you would like to present everything in the tabular form, or you would like to present it in the plot form or figures or some schemes. Which way of presenting your data is more appropriate, how the readers will be able to understand your outcome. That is very important when you are developing your result and discussion section. And do not generate too many. Try to combine few figures together. Do not generate 10-15 figures if you have different sets of data. Can you have one figure in 3 or 5 sets of data presented simultaneously, and then you are comparing these different 5 different sets of data? Too many figures will create trouble for readers to understand it. So rather consolidate few numbers of figures with significantly comparable graphs laid out together and then you can have meaningful comparison. I'm just presenting one of the comments I received. Results reported in the paper are entirely based on simulation, because I worked with some simulation software. So data was processed through simulation software. The comparison with similar work is necessary for appreciating the outcome of the paper. So if your work is limited to simulation only, that means it is not validated. In that case, you might find it difficult to publish your work. So I recommend the authors to provide both theoretical and managerial implications of their findings. That is the part of their comment about result and discussion. So what is their theoretical contribution and implications? That is also important. And if you are working only on simulation, that might not be the enough. Some validation tool should be used to ensure that the simulation results are also validated. The methodology is also appropriate. Yeah. Uh, yes. Last topic is comment about conclusion section. What is being received by me? State more clear the relation among the research questions, which generally we develop at the initial stage, at the introduction stage. Section 1 and conclusion at the section 5 or section 6, how they are linked, how you are answering your research questions in your conclusion section. So that linkage should be there. You should not have different research questions and you are talking about something different in conclusion section. Then it is of no use. So how you are completing your study, how you are completing that circle, that is important. Some issues don't use nouns. These are a few points I think I should present it for you so that it will help you to prepare a good paper. Don't use noun as adjectives. Data generation, that is not the correct way of looking at it. It should be generation of data. This should be followed by a noun. That is when we should write. We should not write this is a fast process. You should always write this process is fast. Describe experimental results in past tense, because experiments were performed earlier. And now you are talking about, you are discussing those experiments. Okay, so you always present your experimental discussion in past tense. Use consistent voice, whether it is active or passive, but throughout the paper it should be consistent. Sometimes in one para you are talking about you are discussing it in active voice, in another para you are writing something in passive voice. That is not acceptable. Compare everything, complete all the comparisons. Maximum velocity in case 1 was higher. And when you say higher with respect to what? So maximum velocity in case 1 was higher than observed in case 2. And complete comparison should be there. And very important, do not start your sentences with but. Okay, it should be like however. No other research group has emphasized this point. So this will make your flow of your article better. Tips: organize the thoughts logically in the sequence. That is, flow is very important. Emphasize more on non-trivial data rather than trivial information. Small information you should not emphasize more on that. Something critical, something crucial, something very significant, you should emphasize more on that. Don't read too many others' papers. Generally, we do that when we are trying to develop our own paper. What we do, we download 100 papers and we read all those papers, and then we start writing our paper. That will reduce the originality, because you will start thinking in that direction only. So instead of that, don't read too many others' papers. Yes, and at the same time, I am also saying that don't take any of the previous work as inevitable truth without examining. ठीक है ना, कि ये हुआ है तो ये करेक्ट है, वैसा जरूरी नहीं है. You have your own experiment and you try to validate that also. Yes. Don't be flowery in your language. Okay, because we are talking about scientific research paper. There is a clear demarcation in style between scientific and literary writing, and we are not talking about literary writing. We are talking about scientific writing. Sentences should be not too long. One para, like 4 5 lines of a one sentence, that is not acceptable. Okay? So 2 lines, it should end there, and then you should have connection in between, however, although, something like that, and you start with a new sentence. Mimic writing style always help you. Like if you have, you should always have. Generally, that is how I develop my paper. When I start writing a paper, I am having 1 or 2 papers. They are my base papers. Okay, so I'll start working with those papers, and I'll mimic those writing style, because for that particular journal, you can see that this is the style which they are accepting. So you mimic those style. You are not. I'm not saying that you should copy it. Otherwise, it will go into plagiarism. Okay, but you mimic those writing style, like how they have argumented in the introduction section, how they have justified their gap. All these things you can mimic, and that is always valid. तो उसमें ज्यादा टाइम नहीं बिगड़ना है. हाई इम्पैक्ट जर्नल के लिए क्या जरूरत है? नॉवेल्टी, सिग्निफिकेंट ओरिजिनल कंट्रीब्यूशन, नॉन ट्रेवलेबल स्टाइल, सिग्निफिकेंट. What is the impact? How significant your work is? Broadness of scientific appeal. Limited hai, then in that case you might not be having the chances of publication. How broad your research area, and how much your research paper is appealing, how broad it is. Interdisciplinary relevance will have great chance of publication. Generalization is very important. If your result outcomes are limited to, say, a particular industry X only, it may not have good chances for publication. But yes, a particular sector, a particular industry type, yes, that means you can generalize your result, and then it will have better chances of publication. Once your paper is complete, what is your task? Submit it to an appropriate journal. There is no universal style, as we discussed earlier. Every journal has its own formatting style, and you must adhere to that. So before you develop your paper, if you are targeting a particular journal, go through that journal homepage, author's guideline, पढ़ लीजिए. It will give you complete information what is expected from your paper, and develop your style, formatting specifically accordingly. That is what I said. Once you can simply look at the articles in that target journal and copy the style. Peer-reviewed journal editors make an initial check, and if they find the work in line with their focused area scope of that journal, then it will go for review. Otherwise not. 90% cases में वो review में नहीं जाता है. What is happening? Once it will go to review, after review is completed, editor makes a decision on the suitability of the paper. If it is screened by editor, went for review, and once the review comments are available, you can have decision like reject, revise, or accept. Again, revise can be a minor revision or major revision. It is great if it is accepted. That means we are talking about name of that baby before starting that particular paper. Now we can say if it is accepted, baby is now born. Let me move fast. I think I had discussed enough. So take home message this is what I would like to say. The first and foremost requirement for making a high impact paper is to plan and come up with a significantly original and novel research outcome. Very important. Originality and novelty. Now I'll not speak anything. Yes, at the end I'll be happy to answer your questions or your queries, but let me move my slides and I'll end my present. From my side, it is done from. So these are my messages.